You ever notice how some people can sit in silence for hours and feel more exhausted than if they'd run a marathon? That's not boredom. That's not daydreaming. That's the mind of a deep thinker. And if you're one of them, this might be the most important thing you hear today. Deep thinkers aren't just people who think a lot. They're the ones who question why the alarm goes off at 7 a.m. They wonder what it means to be happy. They replay conversations from 3 years ago and analyze the tone, the pauses, the unspoken words. Psychology calls this rumination when it goes dark. Philosophy calls it contemplation when it leads somewhere. But most of the time, it's just exhausting. So what does it actually mean to be a deep thinker? And why does it feel like both a gift and a curse? Let's start with something you probably already know, but have never heard explained. Deep thinkers see patterns everywhere, not just in numbers or logic, but in people, in behavior, in the way someone's energy shifts when a certain topic comes up. You notice things others miss because your brain is constantly scanning for meaning. This is tied to something psychologists call high cognitive complexity, the ability to hold multiple perspectives at once. You don't just see black and white, you see the grey, the context, the why behind the what. And this isn't just anecdotal. Studies in cognitive psychology show that individuals with higher levels of introspection demonstrate enhanced pattern recognition in social dynamics. Your brain is literally wired to connect dots that others don't even see. But here's the trap. When you see too many patterns, you start seeing problems that don't exist yet. You anticipate pain before it arrives. You solve conflicts no one else even noticed. And suddenly, you're the only one in the room who feels like they're thinking in 4 dimensions while everyone else is playing checkers. This leads to something that almost every deep thinker experiences but rarely talks about. The feeling that you're living in a different world than everyone else. Let's talk about awareness. Most people live on autopilot. Wake up, coffee, work, scroll, sleep, repeat. But deep thinkers, they can't. Because every moment feels loaded. You're aware of your own thoughts. You're aware that you're aware. You question your motivations. You notice when you're performing a version of yourself. You catch yourself mid-sentence and think, why did I say it that way? Psychologists call this metacognition, thinking about thinking. And while it sounds like a superpower, it often feels like being trapped in a glass box, watching your own life from the outside. You're present, but also a million miles away. This heightened awareness comes with a cost that most people don't understand. You can't turn it off. While others can enjoy a movie without analyzing the cinematography, the character arcs, the underlying themes, you're dissecting every layer. While others can have a simple dinner conversation, you're reading the subtext, the body language, the emotional undercurrents. You're not trying to do this. It's just how your brain works. And the exhausting part? You can't explain this to most people without sounding pretentious or overthinking. So you stay quiet. You keep it inside. You learn to hide just how much you're actually processing. Which brings us to the isolation. Here's something most deep thinkers won't admit out loud. You feel alone, even when you're surrounded by people. Not because you're antisocial, not because you don't care, but because most conversations feel shallow. Small talk drains you. Surface level friendships feel like work. You crave connection, but only the kind that goes deep, and those are rare. Research from the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that people with high levels of introspection often experience what's called existential isolation, the sense that no one truly understands your inner world. You can be at a party, surrounded by laughter and noise, and still feel like you're on the outside looking in. Not because you're judging anyone, but because the wavelength you operate on feels completely different. And the worst part? You start to wonder if something's wrong with you. If you're too intense, too serious, too much. You've probably been told to lighten up, to not take things so seriously, to just have fun. But here's what they don't understand. You're not choosing to be this way. You're not trying to be difficult. Your brain is simply wired to go deeper. And when you're constantly operating at that depth, everything else starts to feel hollow. But here's what they don't tell you. Deep thinkers don't need more people. They need the right people. One conversation that goes deep is worth 100 surface-level interactions. One friend who understands your wavelength is worth a room full of acquaintances. The loneliness isn't permanent. It's just a filter. And once you understand that, the isolation starts to feel less like a curse and more like a compass pointing you toward the connections that actually matter. Now let's address the elephant in the room, overthinking. You've been told to just stop thinking so much, to live in the moment, to let it go. But here's the thing, you can't, because your brain isn't wired for surface level processing. It's wired for depth, and depth takes time. It takes mental energy. It takes replaying, reanalyzing, refeeling. Psychologist Susan Nolan Hoeksema studied rumination for decades. She found that deep thinkers are more prone to it, not because they're broken, but because their minds are constantly searching for meaning and resolution. Think about it like this. When something happens, a conversation, an interaction, a decision, most people process it once and move on. But deep thinkers, you process it from every angle. What did they mean? What did I mean? What could I have said differently? What does this reveal about me, about them, about the world? This isn't weakness. This is your brain trying to extract every ounce of understanding from every experience. The problem isn't that you think too much. The problem is that you think alone. You carry the weight of your thoughts in silence because you're afraid of being too much for someone else. But what if the goal isn't to stop thinking, but to learn how to navigate it? Here's where things get interesting, because overthinking isn't just a problem. It's also a sign of something deeper. Deep thinkers overthink because they care. They care about getting things right. They care about understanding themselves. They care about the impact they have on others. And in a world that's increasingly moving toward superficiality, instant gratification, and surface-level engagement, that level of care is rare. So yes, overthinking can spiral into anxiety. It can keep you up at 3 a.m, replaying a conversation from 6 months ago. It can paralyze you with indecision because you're considering every possible outcome. But it also means you're someone who thinks before they speak, who considers consequences, who values depth and meaning. The key isn't to stop overthinking. It's to give your thoughts somewhere to go, which leads us to something crucial. Deep thinkers need an outlet. Without one, your thoughts just circle endlessly in your mind, building pressure with nowhere to release. But when you give them form, writing, art, music, conversation, with someone who understands, suddenly they stop feeling like a burden and start feeling like a gift. Journaling is one of the most powerful tools for deep thinkers. Not because it solves your problems, but because it externalizes them. It takes the chaos in your head and puts it on paper where you can actually see it, organize it, understand it. Creating is another outlet, whether it's music, painting, filmmaking, coding, building something. Deep thinkers are often natural creators because creation requires exactly what you already do. Seeing beneath the surface, finding connections, expressing complexity. And then there's finding your people, the ones who don't just tolerate your depth, but match it, the ones who can sit with you in silence and it doesn't feel awkward, the ones who want to talk about ideas, meaning, purpose, not just gossip and weather. These people exist. They're rare, but they're out there. And once you find them, everything changes. Now here's the paradox that most people miss. Deep thinkers see the darkness, but they also see the light. You don't just notice the problems, the pain, the weight of existence. You also notice beauty in things that seem ordinary. A conversation, a lyric, the way sunlight hits a building, the way someone's face changes when they talk about something they love. You feel things deeply. Not just pain, but joy. Not just fear, but wonder. And while that sensitivity can hurt, it's also what makes you human in a world that's increasingly numb. Think about the last time you felt truly moved by something. A piece of music, a film, a moment in nature, a conversation. Most people experience those moments on the surface. But you felt it in your chest, in your bones. It stayed with you for days, maybe weeks. That's not a flaw. That's depth. Deep thinkers are the poets, the philosophers, the creators, the ones who ask the uncomfortable questions, who refuse to accept the surface, who demand more from life because they know there's more beneath it. Your mind isn't a burden, it's a lens. And once you learn how to use it, you'll see the world in ways most people never will. But let's be honest for a second. Being a deep thinker isn't always romantic. It's not always poetic sitting in a coffee shop pondering existence. Sometimes it's lying in bed at 2 a.m, unable to shut your brain off. Sometimes it's feeling exhausted after a simple social gathering because you are reading every interaction on 5 different levels. Sometimes it's feeling like you're carrying a weight no one else can see. And that's okay. You're allowed to acknowledge that it's hard, that it's exhausting, that sometimes you wish you could just exist without analysing everything. But here's the truth. You wouldn't actually want to be any other way, because as much as the depth brings pain, it also brings meaning. And meaning is what makes life worth living. So if you're a deep thinker, how do you find peace? Not by shutting off your mind, not by pretending to be someone you're not. You find peace by accepting the weight, by giving yourself permission to think deeply without shame, by finding people who don't just tolerate your depth, but celebrate it. You find peace by creating, by journaling, by turning the chaos inside your head into something tangible. Art, writing, music, ideas. You find peace by realizing that you're not overthinking, you're processing. You're not too much. You're just surrounded by a world that's been conditioned to skim the surface. But you dive deep, and that's not a flaw, that's your gift. The world needs deep thinkers now more than ever. In an age of infinite scrolling, 10-second attention spans, and surface-level everything, the ability to sit with complexity, to think deeply, to question, to wonder, that's becoming rare. But it's also becoming essential, because the problems we face as a society, climate change, mental health, political polarization, technological disruption, they can't be solved with surface-level thinking. They require depth, nuance, the ability to hold multiple perspectives and find connections others miss. And that's exactly what you do. So if you've ever felt like your mind is too much, like you think too deeply, like you're somehow broken because you can't just be simple and carefree, I want you to hear this. You're not broken, you're awake. And the world needs more people who are awake. If this resonated with you, you're not alone. There are millions of people out there who think like you, who feel like you, who see the world the way you do. And maybe that's the whole point. Not to stop being a deep thinker, but to find the others who understand what it's like. Thanks for being here.